Yep. Good evening. So last session we started discussing about React lifecycle hooks. Actually, we started about lifecycle hooks in class component. So in class component, three phases we discussed. One is mounting, another one is updating, another one unmount. What happens? We saw one example for that. Mounting phase, that means it is initializing the memory. Updating phase, it is identifying the changes. And the unmounting phase, it is unloading, means it is unregistering all the registered methods and it is cleaning up the memory. Right. So in this, some important points are there. Some frequently asked questions are there. So what is difference between, I showed one example, you clearly understood, no? Right? I showed one example in the last session. Component mounts, unmounts, will mount, these points we explained. So what is difference between constructor and component? So will mount method. Because component will mount also initializes memory. Constructor also initializes memory. Then what is difference? These are very frequently asked at experience levels. Because you are saying that component will mount, will initialize memory. Then what is difference between constructor and component will mount? Because constructor also initializes memory. What do you think? Question understood? Right? It is reasonable. What do you say? Anyone from online? No, anything else? Constructor will initialize memory with default values. No. What do you think difference? Actually, constructor, what is difference is, here answer is actually constructor, technically, constructor configures the functionality, for component, configures the functionality for component at the time of creating component, at the time of creating component. That means constructor configures the functionality at the time of creating component. Actually, component will mount, initializes functionality after component is created. After component is created. After component is created, it defines the functionality when component functionality, when component is requested, not created. What constructor will do? Constructor defines the functionality to perform when component is created. And what will mount will do? It will define the functionality when component is requested, created, and requested. Which one is first? Which one is first? Actually, created is first. Without created, you cannot request. That means component is created and component will mount is request. That means when you request, so that is actually, yeah. Technically, when we want some actions to perform at the time of creating component, then we need to define on constructor. Like what? Actually, constructor defines actions like creating state. Am I right? What it will do? Actions like constructor will define actions like creating state. It will create the state. Anything else you have seen? Constructor, you have seen that it is creating state. Anything else? Anything else we done in constructor? We done binding events, na? Binding events to state. It is done in constructor. We used bind method, na? That means these kind of actions are performed. These type of actions are performed. These type of actions are performed in this. So technically, what we have to do means what constructor defines actions like creating the state, actions like binding events to the state. Creating state already you saw, binding events also you saw. Then what about will mount? Component will mount. Component will mount method defines actions like so already I explained one concept, actions like connecting with database. When you request, it wants to connect with an API. And when it is finished using unmount, then it will be disconnected. That means when connection should happen, not at the time of creating component, at the time of request. That means connecting with APIs, actions we do like connecting with API. So we do actions like, actually we do the actions like using the context. What is context? I will tell you in the next level. All such activities we do on component will mount. What is context? I will tell you in the next point. We will discuss about that in the next point. So in many interviews of experience level, so this question is very common, because a class component have component will mount. Then if you ask what is purpose of will mount, yeah, as per last session discussion, component will mount means it defines actions to perform, means it initializes memory. Constructor also initializes memory. Then what is difference? Constructor initializes memory at the time of creating component, and will mount is at the time of requesting the component. That is the basic difference. Okay, next, another important question means I told you that you can expect 40-50% of experience level questions in life cycle hooks on in interviews. React.js interviews majority questions for experienced people will be related to these hooks, lifecycle hooks. I told you, architectural based questions means all this under this concept. Okay, next question asked is, what is change detection? This is another important concept asked in interviews. What is change detection? What is change detection? And which hook manages change detection? Actually, change detection is nothing but technically, detection is, it is a technique. It is a technique used in web applications. It is a technique used in applications. Any application can use it. Change detection is a technique used in applications where the changes in value are identified. Where the changes in value are identified. That means it is a technique used in applications where the changes in value are identified. That means now the question is, who manages change detection in React? Who manages change detection in React? Change detection is identifying the changes in the values. Who manages this change detection? So component will update. Update will manage the change detection. So another question is how it identifies the changes. How it identifies the changes. How it will identify the changes. How it identifies the changes. How it knows that the value changed. How it identifies the changes. See, these are very extreme questions. These type of questions very hardly you can expect even for experienced people, but this is very extreme. That means you show vast experience. That means you are a team lead or a project lead like level, and you have to answer questions on React. Then these kind of questions are common. That means don't expect these type of questions even at 4-5 experience level. 4-5 experience level also very rarely we seen this people asking this, but at more than that lead level, that means you are giving an interview at a team lead level, then these kind of questions are very common because these are all related to design patterns. These questions are related to architecture, design patterns. Actually, how it identifies the changes by using a software design pattern called single source of truth. Single source of truth. By using a software design pattern called single source of truth. By using single source of truth. What is this single source of truth? Single source of truth is nothing but it verifies the previous value with current value. It verifies the previous value with current value. That means what it will do is, if previous value is equal to current value, if previous value is equal to current value, that means, what does this means? No change detected. Understood? If previous value previous value is not equal to current value. Current value is different, previous value is different, then change detected. This is important. And here, single source of truth, actually model is referred as single source of truth. Source of truth. Why model is referred as single source of truth? As it contains the data. As it contains the data. Already I told you it uses an MVC architecture in the behind. We discussed that, right? It uses an MVC architecture in the background. In MVC architecture, model is called as single source of truth. What this model contains? It contains the value before change and value after change. If previous value is same as current value, that means no change detected. If the previous value not equal to current value, then it is change detected. And in which phase this change detection happens? That means the question can be asked in another way also. That means in which phase of component life cycle, in which phase of component life cycle change detection occurs? Change detection occurs. What do you say? It is in which phase? Updating phase. In the updating phase, the change detection works. So in which phase of component life cycle change detection occurs? So that is in updating phase. So this is the concept of change detection. So mostly while working with these type of libraries and frameworks, you will come across with change detection. So what is difference between mount and constructor? What is difference? What is change detection and how change detection works, right? And one more point is there. Actually, we will discuss about those type of concepts at the later stages, because for that you should have a complete idea on React. Then we can see end-to-end React flow. When we see end-to-end React flow, there we can understand some more points. But initially, this is not React flow. This is only component flow, right? So in the React flow, where this component flow comes, in the last session, I explained architecture. That means the request, the routing engine, route tables, how the components are mounted and how they handle. This is all the concept of basic lifecycle hooks. Now what happened is, so we have React hooks, React lifecycle hooks different, React hooks are different. So React 16 plus versions introduced React hooks as alternative for component lifecycle hooks. React hooks are different. React component lifecycle hooks are different. That means many people are confused about this. Means React hooks concept is different and React component lifecycle hooks are different. React hooks different, component lifecycle for class components. They are available for only class components. You cannot use them for function components. That is the reason before React 16 and higher, lower versions, people have to tell this as a difference, that class component is better than function. Why class component is better than function? Because class have state, class have life cycle hooks which can manage various phases. but that point is no longer valid from 16 and higher version. Why? Because React 16 and higher versions, they introduced the hooks concept, React hooks concept, which are alternative for class component hooks. Class component hooks, not replacement. Remember, React hooks are not replacement. They are not replacement for component hooks. Understood? They are not replacement for component lifecycle hooks. Component lifecycle hooks. They are just alternative. That means you can use these or that. You can use lifecycle hooks or this. React hooks is a new concept, and this made functions better. That means React hooks made function components more better. They made the function components more better. Technically, React components actually functions, that means React 16 plus versions made function components so better than class components. Function components better than class component. Some features we will see here. What is that and how they will work actually. And so many hooks are defined. And what is the purpose of these hooks? How to use these hooks? What are the various types of hooks available? We will see. Actually, React 16 plus versions provided several predefined, you can say, built-in hooks, several built-in hooks, and also allows to create custom hooks. That means React 16 and higher versions ready-made have some hooks. They have some hooks built in. We can use those hooks and you can handle various functionalities. But it also allows to create your own hooks. You can create your own hook and use it. That is the reason many times when you are working in real-time projects, you will be confused. In a project, they are using some hook and you will come with a complaint that, so we haven't learned in class. That means, sir, we discussed about some hooks, but in my company, I saw a project in that they are using some hook, which we haven't learned. I tried Google about that hook. Nowhere the help is there about it. That means that is not a predefined hook. That is an hook created by your project according to your project requirements. That means you can create your own hooks and you can use them in your application wherever you want. You can handle it. So React allows to create your own hooks, right? And it allows several hooks, built-in hooks. We will use those new hooks and how we can work with them. Actually, React 18, the latest version, have introduced several new things. So that means React 18 made some introduced a few new hooks. So into React, new hooks into React function components. React 18 introduced new hooks. So, and very important is React hooks are backward compatible. All hooks are backward compatible. Backward compatible means you return in React 18 a hook you configured in React 18. So when you run on React 17, it will work. Those hooks are backward compatible, 100% backward compatible. They will work. So the hooks are designed with 100% compatibility. That means in higher version you run in a lower version, they will work. Backward compatibility is configured for that. Now, what are these hooks and how to use them? How we can use these hooks? Some of them already we learned. Few hooks already we discussed, but some more we need to learn. Now, several questions are there. What these hooks can do? What is the responsibility of these hooks? What these hooks can do? So, what hooks can do? So, the question here is, what is the role and responsibility of React hooks? Remember, these are not just lifecycle hooks. These are hooks. I hope you got a clarity. Lifecycle hooks are different and React hooks are different. Lifecycle hooks are available only in class component, and React hooks are available only in function component. And what is the responsibility of React hooks? That means we have a lot of functionals. So here I will show you. Means we have a lot of functionalities. Actually, what is the purpose of hooks in React? What are the problems in class? In class component, you have component did mount, unmount, all these things. What is advantage of these hooks? Actually, class components are very heavy. Already we discussed that. I told you difference between class and a function. They are heavy, they are very complex, they requires lazy loading. Lazy loading means they will be loaded even when they are not required. You have to explicitly implement lazy loading in order to load only when they are required. We need explicitly loading. And it advantage is it uses the state implicitly, but state is very complex. These already I told you differences between class component and function. What hook do these all works? The purpose of hooks is to handle DOM manipulation. DOM manipulations means to handle DOM manipulations. DOM manipulation means creating elements, removing elements, updating data into elements. All such activities are done by DOM manipulation. So React hooks can perform DOM manipulations. DOM manipulations is creating element, removing element, updating data element, all such things we can do DOM manipulations. It can handle DOM server. What is DOM server? It can handle the activities of DOM server. What is DOM server? What is the concept of DOM server? Actually, DOM server is nothing but DOM server's responsibility. Actually, its responsibility is like a web socket. DOM server responsibility is like a web socket. Have you heard about web sockets? In web applications, have you heard about web socket? What is a web socket? Any idea what is a web socket? It is working in our React application also. What is WebSocket? It is working in our React application. Anything? Actually, see, let me show you that point here. So what is means what is that action? That means it can do all these activities. These are the activities what a DOM can do. So DOM manipulations, DOM manipulations means adding element. So removing element. So updating data, updating data into element. All such things are done by DOM. That is actually DOM. What is DOM server? DOM server is nothing but actually it uses a WebSocket mechanism. Socket mechanism. Actually, WebSocket is nothing but WebSocket is working in your React. Have you seen React application when it is running? You compiled npm start. It started. It is running in browser. You went to code, make some changes and save them and go to browser. Those changes are updated without refreshing. How? WebSocket. How it is doing it? WebSocket. Suppose you subscribe to a YouTube channel and some people uploaded a new video into that channel that is pushed to you. In the notifications, you will find one new video. That is, have you refreshed? No, without refreshing, the details are pushed to you. That is WebSocket. For example, you are chatting with some person. Suppose in a Gmail browser, you are chatting with some friend and he sends a message. That message pops up. Without refreshing, a new message pops up. Without refreshing, the new mail comes on and shows you. These are all web sockets. That means what DOM server can do is, DOM server is nothing but identifies the changes and updates the changes in DOM. Identifies the changes and update the changes in DOM. Update the changes in DOM means adding new elements, removing elements. One element is removed, it is updated. Added, again updated. That means it can push updates without reloading. It can push updates without reloading. Actually, to do that, so you need implicitly Ajax. To push updates without reloading, you need implicit Ajax. Implicit Ajax. It uses implicitly Ajax. That means it pushed the updates without reloading the complete page. That is actually DOM server. Another important is, so what hooks can do? Hooks can test render and shallow renderer. That means it can test render and it can shallow render. So it can shallow render. What is test render? You know the meaning of the word render. Render means render is the process of generating output. Rendering is the process of generating output. That means it creates layout. It creates a layout. Already in the introduction, I told you it creates a layout. After creates the layout, render the layout. Renders the layout. That means it will generates the output. It generates the output. That actually it will perform. It is going to perform. So shallow render. Actually, this is another one. Shallow render. See, these are very complex. Usually, this is not required in general level, but still I am taking a chance and explaining little in depth about this. These terms are not required at beginner level. So, but still it is good to have this knowledge. That means what is DOM server, what is test render, what is shallow render, like that. Actually, shallow render is nothing but shallow render, the name itself tells. That means actually it is the process. It is the process between render and painting. Process between render and painting. Painting is nothing but final output is generated. Generating output and painting the output. That is what actually this can do. All these can be managed by hooks. That means component lifecycle hooks are different. They have limited component lifecycle hooks in React, which is available in older versions. They have limited. They are related to only the lifecycle of component, but React hooks are more than them. React hooks were introduced into 16 and higher versions, which are more better than these hooks. So that means whatever the hooks you have, it is better than those, right? So that means one simple note is component lifecycle hooks. Lifecycle hooks are only about life cycle events. Am I right? They are about only life cycle events, and the React hooks are more than that, more than life cycle, more than life cycle. They are about so many things. They are about not only cycle, they are about DOM manipulation, they are about DOM server, they are about rendering, they are about painting. Lot of things they can manage. So these are the points. That means what is the role and responsibility of hooks, what hooks can do. And so many hooks are there, lot of hooks are there. What I will do is I will explain few hooks which are very, very important and regularly used. Other hooks you can explore by yourself. I will give documentation. You can try those examples, right? Because we cannot learn every hook available because it will be hundreds in number. So many hooks are available, React hooks. And because it is a third-party contribution, so many people design custom hooks and introduce. That is the reason some people even never heard about those hooks, but they are React developers. React developers, they work on React for several years, but some hooks they never heard. Because third-party contributions, so many new hooks will be available. These are all so many hooks. Use toggle, firestore query, memory compare, async, require authentication, router, authentication, event listener. So many hooks are available. These all are hooks. A lot of options are available. I captured only few list of hooks here. So many types of hooks are available. They are used for handling so many things. Few important hooks we will see today. We will start learning about some important hooks, right? How we can manage and how we can handle. Now, while working with hooks, that means let me give you this list so that it will be helpful. I will just copy here predefined React hooks. Predefined React hooks, so many are there. Let me give you this list, some of these hooks, right? Lot of hooks are there. These are some predefined hooks. Let me give a list of all these. Just roughly I am giving it. Now, these are so many hooks. Remember, these are all predefined hooks. We can create our own hooks, custom hooks also. We will see how we can handle. Few important hooks we will see now, how we can manage and how we can work with them. So first important, already what hooks we discussed. If you remember, the hook is one popular one is use state hook. So what is the purpose? One more rule I will tell you, then we will go into hooks. That means rules for configuring hooks. Rules for configuring hooks. First rule is React hooks cannot be defined in class. React hooks cannot be defined in class. React hooks are only for functions. React hooks only for function components, only for function components, cannot be defined for class. So for class, these hooks will not work, only function. And hooks must be at top level. Hooks must be at top level. That means top level means before all functions. Before all functions you define. Before all the functions internally what you configure, it should be at the top level. Top level means one more point is there. Top level means, remember, so what is before all functions? Not only that, one more point is, that means before all functions is not a good point. I will tell you here. Top level is nothing but, so you cannot define hook inside a function. You cannot define hook inside a function. So inside a function means JavaScript function, because function component itself is a function. That in that function there is a JavaScript function. In that JavaScript function you are trying to use a hook. It will not work. That is why it should be at top level only. That means outer level, not inside anything. That means you cannot use hooks in conditions and iterations. That means in iterations, in conditions, you cannot use any hooks. They must be independent, individually configured. You must use at top level. So at outer level, you cannot define inside. It cannot be inside a class. It cannot be inside a JavaScript function. And it cannot be inside any block like an iterator or a condition. These are all the basic rules of configuring the hook. We have to make sure that these are all satisfied. Use state hook already we learned. What it will do? It configures a state for component. Am I right? What is the lifespan of state? What is the lifespan of state? State can store values and make it available, right? Available. So until the component unmount. Understood? State can store the value and make it available until the component unmounts. That is the lifespan of state. You can configure state, and you can store any value into state. And syntactically already we learned, so no need to explain this. What we have to do, we define a constant product, and we have some set product, and it is what type? Use state. It is what type? Suppose object. Suppose we have constant, we have some products, we have like set products, and this is use state, and it is an array type. You can configure any. And if you want to store any data into it, we have to use set product. We have to send an object. We have to define set products, and we need to configure an array. That's how we need to specify. So use state is a hook, and it is common. We have used everywhere. So in so many examples, we learned how to configure state, store, and use it. So this already we discussed how to use them. No need of giving any example. Use effect hook. It is another important use effect hook. What is the purpose of use effect hook and what it can manage? Actually, it can manage. That means use effect. It can manage three things. It can manage mounting, it can manage updating, and it can manage unmounting. All three it can manage. Actually, for that we need three different hook methods in class, but only one React use effect hook can manage all. That is the reason class components are very complex, very heavy, with a lot of hooks, means lot of lifecycle hooks individually managed. These all are managed by using single. That means it defines the actions on mounting, it defines the actions on updating, it defines the actions on unmounting. How to define that syntactically? You have to configure use effect. Use effect hook, already we discussed that it uses a callback function. Am I right? It uses a callback function, and this callback function will have dependencies. We will see dependencies in later stage also. One example already we learned with the dependency, how it works. One example here in this, here we define actions on mount and actions on update, actions on mount. Everything is defined here only. Update also here, mount also here. That means if you want any functionality to happen on click on change of values, that also you can configure on update. It will manage update, it will manage mount. If you want to define any action, we have to use return. Return uses, again, this return uses a callback function. This return uses a callback function. What it will do is it defines actions on unmount. So whatever actions you want to define on unmount, you have to configure in return. That means in general life cycle, so means component life cycle, these are managed by 3 hooks. So component will mount, component did mount, component update, and component unmount, 4. So these all are managed by using use effect. It is going to handle all these by using use effect. Just already we done one simple example. Let's see here. Means the same concept what you have learned. The same concept what you have learned here. Yeah. This is the class component related lifecycle example I showed you. That means login, passwords. So user ID password is correct, then open success component, error component, like this. I will give here, I will add a new component. So React hook demo. React hook demo, yep. And let's create a function. So export default function and React hook demo. So that is the component. Okay, it should return. I will just use here a container fluid. We can implement the last session example complete. That means success, error, whatever the concept is there, same here. I will show in a simple way. You can implement that complete here. That means use state and another one. So we need to implement. So we have to import use state from React and use effect from React. We have to define this. As of now, I will do here one simple option here. So we configure a constant, and constant contains some message. That means I will put here as message, and we have set message, MSG, set message. It is use state. So we are configuring a state, just empty defined with the state. Here we will create 2 components here. Yeah, anywhere we can create component function. This is success component. I am creating a success component. I am not giving export default and all. You can give if you are creating separately. If you don't give export default, its intention is to use inside this component. So what it will return? It will return a simple container. In this, we will put a heading. So we will configure here. So here we will define So success, login success, login success. This is the message. Now in this, I am configuring use effect. Use effect is using a callback function and empty dependencies here. Here I am configuring an alert saying that success component will mount. Success component will mount. Okay. Then how do we write unmount? Then we have to use return. Return uses a callback function, right? What this return callback function, it will have an alert. Alert is nothing but success component will unmount. I will give that message, it will unmount. This is success component. That means use effect is defining actions on mount. It is defining actions on unmount. Okay, I will copy this here. Okay, we will copy that and define. Now we will add one more here. This is error component. We have error component, and error component will mount, and error component will unmount. And here we will display a message. So invalid user, invalid credentials. Okay, this is the message. Now I will keep here two important buttons. I will just add button here. I will add a button, and here we will configure. This is success, and here I am giving another button. This is invalid. We have to write all the logic, username, verified or not, password and all. I'm not doing that. I'm just showing you cycle. Means I'm just adding two buttons. On this button, what should happen? And I will put a horizontal line, and below that I will put a heading. So or I will put a container. Here I want to display the message. There I want to display the message. Now what should happen on success click? That means I will write here handle success click. On success click, what should happen? Set message. Into that we will put success component. We will put success component. That means success component will be rendered here. Similarly, handle. So this is function, because we are using a function component. Here we have another function. So what is that function? Function is handle error click. On handle error click, we will set message. You implement in previous example, like login ID, password matching, then success, not matching, then error. Here I am just using button clicks. On button click, which is an error component, we have to access that. So this is, and handle click, success click, error click should happen on here. We have defined on click is equal to handle success click. Here we have to define on click is equal to handle error click. This must happen. Now let's run this and see. npm start. Oh, we need to make this in the startup, right? React hook demo. I will keep this in the startup. React hook demo. Okay, let's import this. In the startup, we are config. You implement similar logic later. That means you take another state, and what you do is you can put these user details. On login, click verify. user details. If user ID password matching, then success component, otherwise error. Here I am just keeping two buttons and calling those components. And we will see the cycle how it works. That means on click, first the component will be requested. When it will means it will be mounted. When it will unmount, it will unmount when you request another component. When you request another component, it will unmount. Let's see. Yeah. Now we have these two options. One is success, another one is invalid. Let's click on this and see. When I click on success, that means now first alert will come. Success component will mount. Then okay. That means success component will unmount. But you can see success that is refreshing. First will mount. Okay. Then it is displayed. I will click on invalid. When I click on invalid, now what should happen? This component should unmount and invalid component should mount. That means when I click on invalid, it says success component will unmount first. That means success component will unmount, then invalid component will mount. Then I click OK. Now error component will mount. And okay, that means the error component will be displayed here. You can see invalid credentials. Now again, I click on success component. That means first what should happen? First, this invalid component will unmount. Then the success component will mount. Error component will mount. After that, success component will mount, right? These actually earlier we have managed by using simple component did mount and component unmount. Now in function components, we can manage by using this technique. So we will see some other examples where you will see update and other options also how to happen technically. So now use effect is one hook which can manage all the three. So we have two different options. One is use state and another one is use effect. This is use effect, means most commonly used hooks and how we can manage them. Another important in the React hooks, this example I will give here. Let me copy this, right? And I will show you here. See, let's open on this, right click, inspect. When I inspect here, you can see when you inspect, there is a network category. In network category, let's open this and refresh this page once. I am refreshing this page once, reload the page. And you can see there is an option, web socket, WS. You see, this is web socket. As I already told you that there will be a web socket. So a web socket is there. It is working. It is a client web socket. Of course, it is a client web socket, but it is related to local server, which is running on your client machine. It is related to local server. That means, so what is meant by this local server? What is this WebSocket's role and responsibility? Its role and responsibility is to push the updates. That means you see here, I'm not refreshing. Let's go here and I do some changes in the presentation. That means here I'm adding heading, React hooks. Am I right? After that, I save this. When I save, it will recompile. After recompiling, you observe, after recompile happened, it pushed these updates who WebSocket. Then automatically in the page that is refreshed. That is actually the role of WebSocket. If WebSocket is deleted and we disable this WebSocket, then every time we have to refresh. That means to see the new changes, we have to refresh. So actually earlier means I can say more than 10-15 years back, web designing uses a concept called RSS, real semantic, simple semantic, RSS, real simple semantic, RSS. We call it as RSS feeds. We call RSS feeds. Now, after in the modern generation, those RSS feeds are gone now. We are depending on WebSockets, majority, right? So technically, this is one simple concept of how the hooks work. One is use state, another one use effect. We will see another hook we have, use context. Use context, use reducer. Some hooks are very important. What is use context hook? What is the concept of context hook? Actually, in web technologies, do you have any idea on what is context memory? In general web technologies, what is context memory? Context memory. What is context memory? Any idea about context memory? Anything about context memory? State, we have state also memory. State also memory. Context also memory. What is difference between state and context memory? That is important. Context, use context hook is related to context memory. Context memory means, one simple example I will give you here. For example, we have server and we have components. That means, let me give you a simple web application example. Suppose we have page 1 and we have page 2. Two pages are there. Now what happened is, this is on server. You requested the first page. First page is requested on server. That means this first page will load on server. The first page is going to load on server. When first page loads on server, now some memory is allocated for this page. That means for this page, so some memory is allocated. Memory is allocated for this page. Now what happens is, generally this memory of the page is called context. Now what happens is, another page is requested. In two ways that request can be. One is, actually this page is requested. When second page is requested, first page will remove and second page will go. That is one technique. That is one technique. First page will be removed and second page will go. Instead of that, we can send this second page in the first page context. That means now very important, a component inside component. When a component inside component, very important is this component page to component have its own context. Understood? Page 2 is having its own context. Understood? It is having its own context. Now, very important is whatever data available in page 1 context, it should be available to page 2. That means every component have a context memory. And that memory is independent for that particular component. That means the context memory of page 1 is not accessible to page 2. The context memory of page 2 is not accessible to page 1. And to make it possible, we have to use this hook, use context. What this use context can do, this situation is very common. Why this situation is very common? For example, what happened is you visited a website. Suppose you are visiting a website. In the website, it asked to log in. You logged in. When you logged in, what happened? Your user details are defined. Your profile is here, right? Profile. Your profile photo is uploaded there. Now what happens in this? You are accessing some different pages, like we have inbox, right? We have like contacts. We are accessing different details. Now what should happen? Inbox is a separate component. Contacts is a separate component. And very important, this profile must be accessible here also. It should be accessible here also. That means how we can make this possible. That means how we can access the index, means the context memory of one component in another. That is done by use context. Use context. What use context can do is actually it uses a mechanism called DI, dependency injection. It uses dependency injection mechanism. By using dependency injection mechanism, actually dependency injection contains two options, a provider and an injector. Dependency injection contains two options. One is provider, another one injector. What provider will do is it locates the data. Injector will inject the data. That means what use context will do, it by using provider, it will locate the data present in context memory. After locating the data present in context memory, that injects the data into another component. That means by using dependency injection mechanism, we have to manually inject the context of one component into another. That means actually in JavaScript, we call this mechanism as closure. Am I right? Higher order function and a lower. Higher, whatever data is available in outer function is accessible to inner. But here not. Whatever data is available in the outer component is not accessible to inner. To make it possible, we have to use context. Actually, context is used for managing the session. We call as session. That means until which time this data will be available. That means data will be available until the session ends. That means this is available until the session ends. Once the session ends, it will stop. The data is no longer available. And very important, in this page 2, there can be page 3. Am I right? There can be page 3 inside page 2. That means a inner component is present inside this. Every page here. Now, whatever you defined in outer context, it can be made available to page 2, it can be made available to page 3. Vice versa, you can share this, you can share that page 3 content to page 2, or you can share it to page 1. This you can manage by using context. That means context is the memory which is available for a component within multiple requests, within the context of that component. For example, means this is login, profile details, all this comes under context only. Another example I will tell you. Suppose you opened some context memory is nothing but, suppose page is loaded first. Page is loaded. That means page is requested, the page is loaded. When first time I request, the page count is 1. One person is using the page. That count is 1. Or you can say, suppose in the page we have a video, like YouTube video. In this YouTube video, you clicked on like. Like means that is 1. You clicked on like, that is 1. When I click on like again, then what happens is the page will reload again. When page reloads again, then what will happen? The like resets again. That means every time it will be 1. But what should happen when you like and you click on the like again? When page is refreshing, the same component is loading again and again. What it has done in previous, we can store it and use it in the next. Context is also possible in this way. That means context will make the memory available across multiple requests. Across multiple requests. If same component is requested again and again, then what happens is what it has done previously, it will keep in the context and make it available for the same component again. If same component is requested again and again, the previous values are available to the current. We can make that possible by using context. The primary aim, 2 things. One, make the data available of outer context to inner. So any component which is accessed within the context, you make the data available to them. Not only that, another situation is if the same component is requested multiple times, every time the count will reset. Without resetting that, previous values we can collect and use for the current. That means across multiple requests, you can handle the memory. Across multi-level components hierarchy also, we can handle the memory. For that, you need use context. We will see one example on this now, how to use context. That we'll see tomorrow, right? It's a big example. We have to spend a complete session on this to understand the context memories and work with them. Tomorrow we will see 2 things, context and reducer, how we can use. Actually, reducer, early days people were using a concept called Redux. But without Redux, now you can handle reducers. Without Redux is not required. Without that also we can manage. These things we will see. Tomorrow we'll continue. Okay, right.